All right, guys, today's video is kind of a follow-up to planting strategies here. I'm going to talk about the spring and summer blends, even though they have run their course and the plot has switched to grain production. There is a planting strategy that I want to implement when I think about what I'm doing with my plot. You got to think about all the way, back a year when I start pre-planting things or what I want to put in food plots. I have certain goals in mind for these plants. So for instances, why would I ditch maybe doing a black oil sunflower and moving to, these giant sunflowers? Well, when I watch the black oil, it doesn't get too terribly large. I would say, you could probably get you a 5 to 6 foot tall sunflower with some good soil, but it was not meeting my goals. So part of the thing is when I'm doing these strategies here, we have a mung bean, we have, cowpeas in general, whether it's Red Ripper or not. These guys grow as a vine. So you can see how these guys grew, right? Nothing here to lift up the cowpeas except for where I put these big sunflowers. Now, what I intend to do with these is when I'm doing these planting strategies, I'm looking for ways to maximize the space of a food plot. So if you're looking at these guys growing across the ground here and there's no lift, what happens over time is when these cowpeas get into that super aggressive mode, you'll start getting vines crisscrossing over each other. At some point, that can smother out other vines or weaker vines, or it can reduce production because it can't get enough sunlight to maybe shoot out some extra pods. Well, when you look what happens here, we have numerous vines that has run up this sunflower. Do you think I'm getting better production by lifting the vines this way? Because you got to think about the width of this dead sunflower. How many pods is packed within a 2 foot radius? Now you're going vertical. A 2 foot radius vertical versus a 2 foot radius on the ground. I've got probably, if I want to use this as an example here, so you encompass this right here and you compare it to this same diameter, there's probably 50 more times the pods in this same area than you're dealing with right here. Because all it did was vine across. You can see it here. It just vined across, had nowhere to run, and also it produces additional limbs or additional vines as it's running up, which allows it to reproduce even more. So by doing this, I'm choking off supply here. I'm basically preventing additional vines from growing when you do that method. So when I have these spring and summer strategies, I'm looking at what plants can not only assist my soil, but also assist other plants. So if the deer had not eaten so many of these sunflowers that were right here, there would have been a lot more of these type situations where you see the cowpeas using maximum space. So this right here would increase my grain production rapidly if I had more sunflowers here. So sometimes it's actually good, depending on what plants are around it, to add additional sunflowers. So by next year, I want to add another 10% sunflower rate in here to help give me a better chance of more stalking and chimney growth is kind of the way I view it here. Think of it, them old houses with chimneys and vines race up them. There's more vine in that condensed space than there is just letting it run on the ground. So that's a strategy that I do look at, trying to see how much real production can be made out of this food plot. Now, let's say you're not running cowpeas and you're doing a soybean mix, like a primary mix of soybean, then maybe your strategy doesn't need to necessarily include a lot of sunflowers, which it doesn't have to. Plants around sunflowers actually generally grow better because those big roots in there from sunflowers help bust up the soil and allow more fibrous roots, say like those soybeans that may have smaller diameter roots, to get down in there and intertwine with those sunflower roots and compete. Also, sunflowers do attract earthworms, so that helps aerate your soil around those plants. So in the right amount of ratio between soybean and sunflowers, you actually can creep up production a little bit. And then, so let's say we're ditching the cowpeas over here. Now we've moved into this. You got to think about what companion plants help soybean, because a lot of people think, man, soybean's a nitrogen pumper, I really don't have to add anything else. That is not true at all. Soybean is a nitrogen pumper, but it's not the strongest nitrogen pumper. It's somewhere in the middle of the road when it comes to production like that. So here we need something to assist the soybean, which is another reason I did a lot of research and studying into different blends and mixes over the years, and I realized that sun hemp is the answer I need with soybean. So it helps my soybean grow larger, helps it hold better protein levels. The larger leaf sizes is a bonus. Also, the amount of nitrogen dumped back into the ground really helps these fall blends that are getting going underneath. So by picking multiple species route instead of just picking one species, I'm helping this plot produce more and more. I'm producing better protein, I'm producing better tonnage, I'm also producing more grains, and that is exactly what I want to see. So these pods, because these beans have gotten taller, I can feel quite a bit of weight on these things. So if I'm averaging an extra foot of height, look at how much more beans you're getting, and then multiply it over this whole area. That's why I'm doing multiple species. You can try to use fertilizers to override some of that, but that just requires you to spend more money in order to do that. So these plots that are on budgets, to me, these multiple species strategies pan out the best over time. You may not see too much of a change year one. You might see somewhat of a change year two, and then by year three, it'll look like a big leap compared to when you first did it. So these plants are here to help each other. That's why these planting strategies in poor soil has really helped. Now, as of right now, if you was to rewind the clock and say that was a summer blend, well, you're looking at it going, man, it's not getting tall. It's not, it's thick down low. Well, that's right. It's thick down low for now. But what happens at the end of its cycle? What happens here at the end of its cycle? Everything that I'm doing is trying to find ways to improve soil and improve the plot. This, which you've seen several of my videos, for those of you that's been here long enough and been through several planting cycles, this will be 6 to 8 feet tall when the time comes. Not right now, but when the time comes, this will hit that incredibly tall height. So what's good about that? Well, that goes back to different species needing different things. Like right here, see that winter pea? It's a vine. Treat it like cowpeas. It needs something to grow up to get bigger. And that's exactly what this cereal rye will do. It'll run up it just like it does these sunflowers. It's just a smaller scale version of it. So everything that I'm doing, planting strategy wise, is helping to get my deer bigger, even though right now the deer movement is basically at night, which is all right for now, but eventually that'll change too. But that's just something that I like to think about when you're trying to figure out, you know, can I make this plot better? I can't afford to expand, but you might as well get the maximum return out of the areas you got. And for those of you that's commented in the past about how much your plots have improved using trace minerals and different types of fertilizers or even different soil tests, tests can, you know, the type of test you do can really help this plot produce or not. So in my case, it's about production. And this plot is definitely doing that because instead of monoculturing food plots, I am now multi-species strategy planting. The more species that I can put in here, the better the plots generally get. So I've got a huge range of species and a huge range of fall-winter blends underneath. So I hope this helps you. Some of this might get a bit repetitive, but definitely this is something that I am striving for to compete. Even the screen wall, there's a fantastic strategy that I did with that. I started putting cowpeas in the screen wall, but you need a healthy screen wall to maintain that weight. If it's a low end, scrawny looking screen wall, then it's going to break and fall over. This one is thicker. It's not the best it could be, but it's definitely thicker. You can see where it's caved in over here some now. But the better this soil gets, the better these cowpeas will work in a screen wall like that. Can you imagine how much grain would be packed into that screen wall as an additional source of food if cowpeas were mixed in that wall all the way around? That's something I'm thinking about. So even though if I'm maximizing grain production here, suddenly I introduce height to a food plot like that. And there's certain plants in here that would just go absolutely bananas over vining. You know, your vining plants would go bananas in some scenario like that, and even produce maybe 10 to 15, 20 times more than what they could have just by letting them run on the ground. So there you go, guys, a video on spring and summer strategies. You know, big roots, little roots, medium roots, deep roots, shallow roots. This mix and covers all that stuff. So that way I'm getting the maximum return. All right, guys, have a good one.